Did JP Morgan just force some of the biggest holders of Bitcoin to sell? We have some new rumors circulating this morning that companies like MicroStrategy and Tether, we can see here, Arthur Hayes is claiming that a 30% decline in gold and Bitcoin could wipe out their equity, forcing them to sell. So are these rumors true about Tether and MicroStrategy? Again, the MicroStrategy debate is heating up after Michael Saylor posted this. What if we add some green dots to this chart? Everybody's wondering, what's a green dot and why are the odds of Strategy selling some of its Bitcoin skyrocketing by 30% this weekend? I think it has to do with an interview that the CEO of Strategy gave over the weekend saying this.
Can sell Bitcoin, and we would sell Bitcoin if we needed to fund our dividend payments below 1x MNAV.
So let's break that down. He just said we would sell Bitcoin if it got underneath a 1x MNAV. Now, what does that complicated term means? Well, if we jump on over here and we have a look at the valuation of MicroStrategy, we've got the share price here. And what an MNAV means is the net asset value of the Bitcoin on the balance sheet versus the Strategy market cap. So let's have a look at where those valuations are right now. If we jump on over and we have a look at Strategy's MNAV, we can see that right now, I believe it might have just dipped very close to that 1x level. So we can see here, this is their very own metric, 1.14. So the CEO of Strategy just said if that goes beneath 1, they could be forced to sell. Again, let's listen to what else he says, and we'll get the full context here in a moment.
And that would be, by definition, if BTC yield is our North Star, right? And that's sort of what our key, our primary KPI is, just like earnings per share might be an important KPI for a traditional company. Then under 1x MNAV, it's more accretive to BTC yield to sell our Bitcoin to pay the dividends. And so we would do it in that case. Now, that said, right, as we speak, we have to look at liability management. Are there ways that we can raise capital above MNAV to pay for things below MNAV? So there are things that we think pretty long and hard about. Just like in 2022 during Bitcoin winter, we thought long and hard about what to do with our secured loan, our Bitcoin-backed loan. We decided to buy back our Bitcoin-backed loan at 80 cents on the dollar. We're pretty nimble.
That was with Silvergate.
That was Silvergate, yeah. And so now, as we're looking at Bitcoin winter, as we see our MNAV compressing, my hope is our MNAV doesn't go below 1. But if we did, and we didn't have other access to capital, we would sell Bitcoin.
But that would almost be a last resort.
That would be a last resort, and I think, look, there's the mathematical side of me that says that would be absolutely the right thing to do. And there's the emotional side of me, the market side of me that says, we don't want to really be the company that's selling Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, for me, the mathematical side wins.
Well, I think the Strategy CEO just kind of said the quiet parts out loud in that interview. And what's concerning is there are other metrics and other dashboards showing that MNAV is 1.01. So very, very, very close to that level where the Strategy CEO says that they would sell some Bitcoin. Now, what's interesting about this is that's more of a bigger picture, zoomed out look. Strategy actually bought more Bitcoin this morning. So I want to quickly break down that because, again, there's a lot of FUD. Bitcoin's crashing at $85,000. JP Morgan and the biggest banks in the world were attacking Bitcoin over the past couple of months. A lot of people don't know what's happening. So again, I think Strategy selling their Bitcoin, it's still a relatively unlikely scenario, even if Polymarket is saying that there is a 30% chance of them doing it by January 2026. That's next month, by the way, because it is December 1st today. And just while we're talking about dates, who exactly is, what month is it? This is the month that QT ends. I've got some fancy charts I want to show you talking about QT and QE and what exactly this means for Bitcoin and how this might change the cycle. But let's keep talking about Strategy first. So this little video came out literally an hour ago. I didn't get the chance to watch this entire thing before the live stream. But what's interesting is Strategy just announced a $1.44 billion USD reserve. So that kind of explains what Michael was saying over the weekend when he said, what if we see a green dot? Now, naturally, this got a lot of people interested. Hang on a minute. We've seen nearly 100 orange dots. Saylor has bought Bitcoin on 87 occasions, and they are the orange dots. But what is a green dot? Well, now we've just found out that it is US dollars. So again, there's speculations, there's theories. Everybody's wondering what exactly is going on. But I did see that Strategy, let me quickly fact check myself, but I believe they bought more Bitcoin this morning. They added 130 Bitcoin, and they now hold exactly 650,000 coins. I think that's interesting. I don't think it's interesting that, again, think about that. He went to a round number, 650,000 Bitcoin exactly, added US dollars to the reserves. I think that's interesting. That's a tidbit there. Maybe he just paused for a little while at a big round number. I'm not sure. But don't be scared. I think that's the takeaway here. Strategy is not selling Bitcoin. They bought a little bit more. And I think the big number that everybody's watching is their MNAV, which is still above 1 for now. But again, hypothetically, even if Strategy sold a little bit, what would that mean? I mean, psychologically, I think it would be interesting. I think a lot of people would get scared. Strategy's bought Bitcoin day after day after day for 5 years. I think them selling, I think the FUD would go through the roof. If you think we've seen FUD over the past month with Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan quietly attacking Bitcoin and Bitcoin companies, you haven't seen anything yet. Because if Strategy were to sell even a little bit of Bitcoin, I think the hysteria online would be, it'd be insane. It would be very loud, I will say that. But I think bigger picture, even if Strategy sold, again, hypothetically, I'm not saying they will, but even if they sold 10% of the position, I don't think it would make a meaningful impact to the Bitcoin market. I think the bigger impact would be the hysteria, which again, we're going to get to in a moment with Jamie Dimon, JP Morgan. But let's cover another piece of FUD that I saw this morning. So everybody's talking about this tweet from Arthur Hayes. For those who don't know him, he's got 1 million followers, founder of BitMEX, I believe. He's been right about a lot of things. He's been wrong about a few things. I really appreciate his, macro takes on a lot of things. That's probably, I think he's been right about a lot of things in the macro land and the Bitcoin space as well. But he said this morning. Well, it was actually over the weekend that got a lot of people concerned. Even the CEO of Tether made a tweet kind of clarifying the situation. So I'm going to show you both sides of the story so that you kind of can understand what is happening right now. So let's break down what Arthur Hayes said. He said a roughly 30% decline in gold and Bitcoin would wipe out their equity, and then USDT would be, in theory, insolvent. I'm sure some large holders and exchanges will demand a real-time view of their balance sheet so that they can assess the insolvency risk. He attached a picture of their assets. We can see they've got $12 billion in precious metals, and they've got $9 billion of Bitcoin. What I think is... And by the way, they've also got $112 billion of US Treasury bills, which is fascinating. Again, for a very long time. Anyway, I won't get into that theory yet. What I think is interesting here is the $12 billion of precious metals, because a lot of people are wondering, hey, why the flip is Bitcoin crashing right now? Well, I think precious metals is kind of sounding the alarm bells, so to say. This is silver, by the way. And this thing broke out over the weekend, got above $53. Right now it's at $57. If we zoom out a little bit, again, I like to zoom the charts all the way out and show you where we are at. Silver is at an all-time high forever. It just got above its 1981 all-time high. And I'm not going to lie, that's the most bullish chart in the world right now. Silver looks great. Gold also looks as if it's breaking out. And again, why are we talking about some boring pet rocks and some metals? It's because they are still kind of an alarm bell. They're telling us what's going on with the system. They're telling us liquidity is coming. They're telling us the money printers are coming. And gold, even if we zoom in here on a weekly chart, still looks bullish. And it's natural to have pullbacks after you've just rallied from $2,000 an ounce to $4,500 an ounce. But gold and silver breaking out is telling you what is coming next. It's telling you that QT is coming to an end and the money printers are absolutely coming. So again, don't be scared. There's a lot of people scared. A lot of people are fussing over this Bitcoin dip. Come back in 6 months. I think that's a great takeaway. Now, we're talking about this tweet from Tether. I got distracted there. I think it's interesting they hold $12 billion of precious metals. And they've got about $9 billion of Bitcoin. They are one of the biggest holders of US treasuries in the world. And why a lot of people are freaking out is because they just recently got downgraded by S&P. That's a ratings agency. So Paulo, the CEO of Tether, responded. He doesn't think it's a big deal. And I don't either. Again, who was wrong about the 2008 global financial crisis? S&P. All of the experts were wrong. They don't understand any of this. S&P wasn't bullish on MicroStrategy as it ripped over the past 18 months. They're always bearish on Bitcoin. So again, these guys, just because they downgrade MicroStrategy or Tether, that in and of itself, I would encourage you to just not listen and trust the experts. Nobody knows where the price of anything is going. Now, Paulo responded to the Tether FUD over the weekend. I'm going to read this out. I showed you the tweet that I think he's referring to from Arthur Hayes. And he says, Tether will continue to maintain a multi-billion-dollar excess reserve buffer and an overall proprietary group equity approaching $30 billion. Tether has $7 billion in excess equity on top of its $184 billion stablecoin reserves, plus another $23 billion in retained earnings as part of our Tether Group equity. Tether Group total assets, $215 billion, stablecoin liabilities, $184 billion. This is the takeaway. S&P made the same mistake of not considering the additional group equity nor the $500 million in monthly base profits generated by the US Treasury yields alone. And here's the backhand. Some influencers are either bad at math or have the incentive to push our competitors. Forever trusting who we are, no, nothing else matters. So I think that's a strong tweet right there. And I think the takeaway here is Tether has more assets than liabilities. Again, the Tether truthers have been wrong for a decade, claiming that Tether's going to collapse and it's the only reason why Bitcoin is pumping. Tether's minting money out of thin air. It's not true. They do quarterly attestations. We can see the assets they hold. They're a lot more transparent than they used to be, and I don't think they're going to be forced to sell Bitcoin. Especially, they've got 112 billion of US Treasury bills, 18 billion of overnight reverse repurchase agreements. They've got money market funds. They've got 6 billion of that. They've got a ton of cash. They've got a lot of cash. They got a lot of gold. They got a lot of silver. And they got a lot of Bitcoin. They got 9 billion of that. I think the concerns of Tether selling, again, a lot of people are talking about it. I'll address it. I'm less concerned. Again, look at incentives. Who are the main people spreading the FUD about Tether? They're investors in stable coins, aren't they? That's what Arthur Hayes does. Doesn't he invest in multiple major stable coins? Athena, doesn't the list go on? He's a big altcoin guy. Where are all the altcoins built? Top of Ethereum. He loves Ethereum. Always, always, always look at the incentives. Always look at the incentives. Incentives is going to be a reoccurring theme in today's video. I want to continue to go back to, because incentives are very, very important. Now, we've kind of covered a little bit about MicroStrategy. We've covered a little bit about Tether. British Hodl here chimed here. Definitely an S&P 500 and ratings agency move by MicroStrategy today to raise a cash reserve to pay for dividends. Again, why does MicroStrategy added US dollars to their balance sheet for the first time in 5 years? Maybe this is a good explanation. We have to get the first, biggest, and baddest Bitcoin treasury company accepted, and Team MicroStrategy is clearly doing everything they can. Again, I think that could be maybe why they added a little bit of cash to the balance sheet. Now, this pivots us to the macro discussion, because there are some more explanations for maybe why Bitcoin is crashing outside of just fear and FUD from about MicroStrategy and Tether selling the Bitcoin. A lot of people are confused. I actually saw this clip on CNBC this morning. Quickly play it for you.
Presume someone smarty pants out there, Bitcoin down 5.6%. I haven't got a clue why. I presume someone smarty pants out there will say it's because of some forced liquidation, it's because of so and so, so and so. But when an asset class can move so aggressively, and I haven't seen any decent copy, and I'm going to say this, on CNBC, on the FT, on Reuters, on Bloomberg, on every one of those major market sources out there, I've seen no one coming up with a conclusive idea of why a major asset is down 6%. That, for me, is the problem with crypto. The fact that random events can move so aggressively and no one's got a clue why.
Okay, so I think the first big mistake for why this guy doesn't understand why Bitcoin, again, it's not crashing. It's $85,000 right now. But I think the biggest mistake that this guy's suffering from, he doesn't know the difference between Bitcoin and crypto. He conflates the two. So that's always a massive red flag that I tell you guys. If somebody doesn't know the difference between Bitcoin and crypto, they understand neither. They don't get either of them. Now, what I think is interesting is, yes, stocks are not necessarily selling off a lot. The S&P 500's opened, maybe down 0.5%. But what I think is interesting is there's a little bit of fear in Japan right now. So I saw this tweet on Twitter. Bitcoin dumped because the BOJ put December rate hikes in play. So what's happening? The yen is losing a lot of value. If we look at a chart of the US dollar versus the Japanese yen, it's, wow, hit 157 recently, which is huge, by the way. So this is the chart. This going up measures the US dollar strengthening against the Japanese yen. This is a 15-year chart going back to 2012. And you can see how choppy this chart gets at 150. Whenever the Japanese yen approaches that 155 level, the chart gets very choppy, because that is when the central bank steps in and tries to smash down the dollar. They want to keep it under 150. Now, I think, again, what do we always say about central planning and taking the volatility out of the markets? Be very, very careful. I prefer this view of the chart. This is showing how aggressively the yen is losing value against the dollar. And I want to show you how catastrophic it is. Since 2011, the Japanese yen has lost 52% of its value against the dollar. Again, that's a 15-year chart. The yen carry trade is very cyclical. And the yen carry trade unwinding, very, very significant. Again, they've got massive bond markets, because for a very long time, they had very low yields over there in Japan. Again, if you can borrow at 0% in Japan, a lot of these hedge funds levered up. They levered up with low interest rates, but now that's all changing. So the yen's Japanese central bank is talking about raising interest rates. And we can see for the first time in a very long time, their yields are screaming higher. This is a chart going back to 2007. This is the Japanese 20-year government bond. Highest level in 20 years. And I think maybe, just maybe, all of this does make a little bit of sense and it does all connect. I might try to connect these dots for you guys and explain exactly what is happening with macro, because this is the big curveball everybody's worried about. What is going on with macro? Are we in a 4-year cycle? Is the 4-year cycle dead? Because again, if the Fed has ended QT today in December like they promised, why is Bitcoin not ripping? A lot of people have a lot of questions. A lot of people are very confused. I want to dive into this chart in a moment, but I'll just remind you, all of this confusion and worry about the markets, it is irrelevant if you understand the true purchasing power of Bitcoin and if you've got your Bitcoin in one of these. It's, of course, a hardware wallet. I always tell you guys that if you don't hold the keys to your Bitcoin, you don't own the Bitcoin. So again, especially in very volatile times like these with the markets, that is when you don't want Bitcoin on an exchange. We all saw what happened on October 10th with all of those traders getting liquidated because they had trades and coins sitting on an exchange. Do not become a victim. Go and self-custody your Bitcoin. Again, now is the perfect time to self-custody your Bitcoin because massive hardware wallet companies are running huge sales. You can get 40% off a Trezor Safe 3 or a Trezor Safe 5 if you use the link down below. Trezor is running a massive Black Friday sale. Again, these things are super slick. I've got the Trezor Safe 7 in my hands right now, and if it focuses, you can see how clean this design is. It's a very nice hardware wallet. And Ledger is also running a massive Black Friday sale as well. You can get huge discounts, get up to $90 of free Bitcoin if you buy a hardware wallet. Again, you can see you can get $70 of free Bitcoin with the Flex. You can get the Ledger Nano X for 74 big ones. That's 50% off, by the way. You get $80 of free Bitcoin if you buy a Ledger Stacks. If you've been putting off taking self-custody of your Bitcoin, now is the time to take advantage of the Black Friday sales. And again, maybe buy your husband or your girlfriend or your wife a little bit of a Christmas present. What is it? 1st of December, Christmas is coming. So let's break down what is going on with macro. Because this is, again, causing a lot of confusion I see in the space. Ton of confusion. Let's break down what's happening. So I tried to use colors on my chart. The green boxes is showing us the points in the 4-year cycle where liquidity goes exponential. Typically, the last 6 months of these 4-year cycles is when we see a massive increase in liquidity. And you can see the times that we've had those big, massive rises in the year-on-year growth rate of liquidity. It was between April and December in 2017. That's the first big green box. What did Bitcoin do? 20x'd. Went from 1,000 to 20,000 in 2017. When was the next time we saw a massive growth in the money supply? It was between March 2020 and February 2021. Bitcoin also ripped from what? $4,000 to $65,000. Now you can also see the red boxes is QT. This is when the year-on-year money supply is shrinking. You can see Bitcoin typically has corrections during these times. Now what's really interesting is we've been going through QT recently. QT just officially ended, which implies that QE is coming and money printing is coming. Now, this is where I think a lot of people get caught on the ideas of these 4-year cycles. A lot of people have thought that Bitcoin has to peak in the 12 to 18 months after the halving. Again, our halvings happen every 4 years. A lot of people think Bitcoin is just cyclical and it's a 4-year cycle because of the halving. I don't know. again, I think there's a little bit of both going on here. The halving obviously makes sense, supply and demand, but so does macro, so does liquidity in the system. And what's interesting about this liquidity cycle is it's lengthened. There's been lots of factors that has lengthened this liquidity cycle. The treasury is pushing off the type of bonds and the bills they're buying. We've got the government shutting down recently. The government just filled up the TGA account. Trump's talking about pumping out $2,000 stimmies in mid-2026. We've got interest rates expected to be slammed down when Powell gets given the door. And everything just points towards there being a lot more liquidity in the markets in 2026, which would fundamentally lengthen the cycle that we've seen. So I think that's interesting. I think that's something that might be catching a lot of people offside, because there's a lot of crypto traders who are not looking at liquidity and they just think Bitcoin's a 4-year cycle because it always has been. So again, just be on the lookout. We live in very volatile times. Nobody knows where the price of Bitcoin is going to be in the short or the medium term. Okay, there is no model, there is no theory, there is nothing that can predict where the price of Bitcoin is going. So be very, very careful out there. There is a lot of noise. Again, I was hoping to see $210,000 Bitcoin to $280,000 Bitcoin because Giovanni predicted it last year in 2024. But hey, we're at 85,000. So no, the power law is not going to help you. No, you can't model diminishing returns. It's really tough to know where the price of Bitcoin is going. I think the only model that makes sense is if you hold Bitcoin for 3 years, it's pretty unlikely that you're going to lose money. I don't think we've seen anyone buy Bitcoin and hold it for 4 years who has lost money. Every time period you look at, doesn't matter how you cherry pick it, those who buy Bitcoin and hold it for at least a couple of years, I say 2 to the people that I meet, but 4 years is a little bit more of a safe and conservative bet. Nobody loses money. So again, just keep that in the back of your mind right now. Signal is very important when the world is so noisy. Again, nobody has any idea why the Bitcoin price is crashing right now, but I just see all of this as a massive opportunity to buy Bitcoin on the discount. Again, a lot of people say that Bitcoin is seeing a Black Friday discount right now. Maybe it is. Maybe Bitcoin's on sale. Again, it's not just Bitcoin on sale. You can also get your hands on the titanium plates from Stampseed. They are also running a massive Black Friday sale. I always encourage you, again, titanium is better than stainless steel. If you're going to go buy a hardware wallet, you may as well also spend the time backing up that hardware wallet the way it deserves to be backed up. That's why I love the titanium plates from Stampseed. Again, massive Black Friday sale. That 21% discount will not be available for long. You can use the promo code Luke21, and that'll get you 21% off anything you want to buy from Stampseed. So take advantage of that while you can, and go and deal with your security, your backup, your hardware wallets, your setup while the price is going down. This is the perfect time. While a lot of people are scared, fearful, because when the bull run comes, it's going to get very noisy. It's going to get very distracting. People are going to be saying that MicroStrategy has to sell its Bitcoin. Again, there's going to be a lot of noise in the space. Just be very, very cautious. Nobody knows where the price of Bitcoin is going to go. I think the Japanese bond market essentially blowing up is a much bigger signal than most people understand. A lot of people are stuck in these 4-year cycles. Again, zooming out here, the Japanese bond market hitting its highest yields in a very long time. That's a huge signal. Again, Bitcoin is the only solution to the massive debt crisis we're living through. Again, if you do want to get your hands on some Bitcoin, I always encourage you guys to figure out some ways that I think is, let's just say it this way, advantaging you. Again, you buy Bitcoin on a centralized exchange. What happens? You have to tell the government. They will tell your government, the tax authorities. We've all seen what happened in the UK recently. They're coming for your money. They're going to tax you out of the wazoo. This is why I really like the idea of mining Bitcoin. It's a great way you can get your hands on Bitcoin in a more privacy preserving way. Again, it's perfectly legal to mine Bitcoin. If you have any questions about how you can get started mining Bitcoin, I always encourage you to check out Blockware. They've got a hosted mining service where they go and they source the cheapest electricity all over America. They do the dirty work. They plug in the loud miners. They take care of the repairs. So again, you can take advantage of their hosted serving miners, or you can just simply buy the miners directly from them. Highly encourage you guys to check out Blockware and just get your hands on some Bitcoin, because that is the signal here. All of this macro noise, that's noise. All of this FUD about MicroStrategy and Tether, expected to get louder. This is what the banks want to do, JP Morgan and Morgan Stanley. Again, both of them are rolling out Bitcoin-related products. We covered that ad nauseum last week. We're not going to rehash it all, but it makes sense why we see so much noise in the space. So again, stay very focused on the signal. And with all that said, I'm late, so I've got to run. Hope you guys have a good day, and I'll see you all in the next one.